just trying to promote martial arts and jiu-jitsu in the valley because it's going so strong. And it looks like we're live. So guys, welcome. If you're tuning in live or if you watch the show later on, like most of you will, this is episode 74 of the Hammer Fist podcast for MMA Fight Pass. And this is actually for our virtual show that we're doing now. This is episode 5. So the whole technology thing like we're doing right now because of the quarantine, this is kind of all new to us, to me and Archie and James and Xavier. But we like the way it's been going, and it's cool to be able to get guys like Matt Smith and Edwardo Crema in today. And we've already had a host of really cool guests, Dan Camarillo and Dela Cruz, and just a lot of guys from the Valley. But thank you guys for tuning in. I want to introduce the guests before we get going here, before we start the story. Because the last few shows we've been talking a lot about the coronavirus and being under quarantine, and I know it's important, but we've had it up to here with that. You know what I mean? We might talk a little bit about that because we're in the quarantine. But this is so cool to me because Matt is one of the first BJJ instructors, like a real legit BJJ instructors that I was able to start my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu journey in. So a lot of you guys already know Matt Smith. He's the owner and head instructor at Pacific Martial Arts in Fresno. And then we have Edwardo Crema. Eduardo, I've only met you a couple times, my brother. How did you meet Matt? Because I know you're an instructor there too, right?
Yeah, correct. When Pacific started, when it was on the Boulder Loop area here in Fresno, I lived real close that I could jog there. So I started going there because, I wanted to do some UFC.
Right.
So I was like, kind of like young and dumb. And I was like, let's try this out. So I started going to PMA back then in 2007, something like that, around there.
Okay. Well, guys, before we get this show going, the reason we brought Matt on, and me and Archie talked about it quite a bit, was it's all of the story of jiu-jitsu in the Central Valley and MMA in the Central Valley. That's kind of what our podcast is all about. And so the way I met Matt, let me just give me a couple minutes to just explain this real quick, just a quick little breakdown of how I met Matt. So like many of us out there, before I saw Royce Gracie fight in the UFC 1, 2, 3, and 4. When I was real young, I was at a buddy's house, and my buddy's dad bought this event. It was called Extreme Fighting, and it was Ralph Gracie was in there. Now, at this time, I had grown up doing karate and kung fu. Like, that was pretty much what I had done since I was a child. And this day, this guy, he buys this pay-per-view, and one day in like 4 fights, I watched Ralph Gracie just dismantle like everything I had ever seen in martial arts, as far as like karate and kung fu and kickboxing and these stand-up arts. And I had never seen anything like that in my life. And I was young, and it was just this guy, Ralph Gracie. It is all I knew. And I went outside after the thing, and I told my friend, I was like, man, I want to learn this jiu-jitsu. But there was none in Visalia at the time. Here in Visalia was just Taekwondo, karate, and kung fu. So I move away and I go to college up north in Humboldt County. And one night I'm riding home from work, and I see on the side of a building, it says Japanese Jiu-Jitsu Kodokan. And it was a Japanese Jiu-Jitsu school / judo. And there was no Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I joined that. I had remembered the Jiu-Jitsu part. So this is where my story starts. So I studied the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu and judo for about 6 years, and I decided to move back home. And this sensei, they were real good people up there, different type of person up there in Humboldt. He sent me home with these 6 cheap little foam mats, and he just told me, look, you can keep doing jiu-jitsu. All you need is a training partner. So I brought these mats back to Visalia, and I basically recruited all the kids in the neighborhood. And I was a young man at this time, and I recruited these young little like gangster kids in the neighborhood, and we duct taped these mats together, and we would just do jiu-jitsu in my garage. And I did this for months, man. And then one of those kids, one day he comes home and he goes, hey, I was at work and I heard this radio advertisement. And he goes, it's a Ralph Gracie affiliate. He's all, it's one of those Gracie schools. And he's all, it's in Fresno, and it's on the corner of Marks and Bullard. And I was like, no, you got to be kidding me. It's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I was like, so I started listening to this radio show. Finally, I hear the commercial, and it's a commercial for Pacific Martial Arts. And was it a Ralph Gracie affiliate, Matt?
Yeah.
And so I hear this commercial, and man, I just jump in my car, and the first day that I could, and I drove over there, and this is where my story started, because I had the 6 years of Japanese jiu-jitsu, but little did I know the huge difference it was going to be in the training. So I go into the school and I meet Matt, and there was another gentleman that is a very important, that rest in peace, Ted Stobie was there. And he was really, really important in my journey. And so was Matt. And there was another gentleman, I believe his name was Jason Hannon. I might be pronouncing his name wrong. So those three gentlemen were there. Matt welcomes me right in. And so I go from being a 4th degree brown belt in this Japanese jiu-jitsu to starting over as a white belt in the Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which was cool with me. And right off the bat, that first night, I saw the difference. And the difference, I can just make it real quick and easy. The difference between the Japanese jiu-jitsu and the Brazilian jiu-jitsu was the live rolling, and like the guard pass drills and just the live rolling. We didn't do that a lot in the Japanese jiu-jitsu. It was more kata based. And man, it opened my eyes tremendously. And from that point, I started driving up to Matt's school twice a week. And that's where my story began.
What year was that?
Bro, I can't even tell you. I fought when I was 28 years old for the first time. I think I started training with Matt when I was 26. So it was way back there. It was on Marks and Bullard.
Yeah.
That was an old school spot. And Matt, I kind of had got the feeling that you, before Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that you were a lot like me, that you had done like the karate and the stand-up art.
Right.
What's that? I hear a little like break there, Bart.
No, we're good, Tom. I mean, it's on your side, but just keep you're good. Just keep steady.
So Matt,
go
take it from there, Matt.
So my background was originally karate. So I'd done a lot of different systems of karate. I actually, I'm going to date myself here, but I started karate in 1974. And I was a kid, and then I got pretty serious through the 80s. I ended up getting my black belt in 1988. And I moved to Fresno in 1989. I started teaching. And then I was going to Fresno State. I was doing judo with Mr. Imamura at Fresno Judo Club. And I was also doing Eskrima, which is Filipino stick and knife fighting with Grandmaster Estelilia. So I had some amazing mentors at the time. And then through Fresno Judo Club, I met Dan and Dave Camarillo. And when I was ready to open up Pacific Martial Arts, I said to Dan Camarillo, I go, hey, I want you to teach judo for me. And he was like, no, bro, we need to do jiu-jitsu. And so that's, I was like, all right, well, and about that same time, Dan Camarillo had befriended Oleg Tektarov. Do you guys remember Oleg Tektarov, the Russian bear?
Sir.
So
Tremendous.
Oleg was living in Galt at the time, and he was driving down to LA to take acting lessons. And every time he'd pass through Fresno, he'd stop. Usually it was like at 5 a.m. He'd stop and he'd want to train. And so Dan and I would train with Oleg Tektarov early in the morning. That guy was such a beast. And then on about 2 or 3 times a week, we would drive up to Ralph Gracie Academy, and we'd drive 3 hours. We'd train 2 hours and drive back 3 hours. And at some point, Dave decided to just move up there. And Dan stayed here for about another 2 years, and then he moved up there. And about the time he moved up there is about the time I got my purple belt. So, I was a white belt, and that, I think, for most martial artists, that's the hard thing. But if you can overcome it, you can really go a long way, which is, yeah, you could be a black belt in one system. I have black belts in karate, taekwondo, eskrima, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. But if you're always think of yourself as a black belt and you're not willing to put on a white belt, that's what makes those transitions really, really hard. And so I identify with guys like Tom who are willing to and embrace that type of journey where, all right, I've gotten this expertise over here, and I'm gonna put that down for a moment, and I'm gonna learn something new. And really, I think that was the root of MMA, because really UFC 1, 2, 3, it wasn't MMA. It was, I have this style and you have that style, and let's see which one comes out on top. So MMA came out from guys who were willing to put some ego down and learn multiple styles and ultimately put it together into what we see today.
That's so cool, man. Hey, and like me and one of our other podcast guys, I think you know Chris Ronquillo. He's one of our producers, real good guy. We were having a conversation where he was kind of joking around about Hoist Gracie losing a fight, and I tried to. It kind of, Chris, I love you, but it did kind of upset me a little bit, man, because I modeled my whole MMA a lot off of Hoist Gracie. I watched those Hoist Gracie fights on V8 when I was up in college on VHS from this little VHS store. And after I seen that Half Gracie fight, I was like, these Gracies, I got the Hoist Gracie. I got UFC 1, watched it. And this guy at that VHS store, he had every one from 1 through 4. And I must have watched those Hoist Gracie fights. I'm not kidding you. Every single one of those, thousands and thousands of times. Because the guy was built like me, just a tall, skinny dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I try to explain to people, I think there's new kids out there today that don't have any idea who Hoist Gracie is or what that man did for martial arts. I think it was tremendous, man. But Edwardo,
sir,
I'm not sure how old you are, my brother. How did you get started in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Who was your first mentor?
I am 33. I started probably I was 20, 21. Yeah, I mean, I used to just jog because I wanted to do something. I wrestled in high school. I wasn't really good, but I wrestled. So I wanted something that was going to keep me in shape. I tried working out and lifting weights, but that just got boring really, really fast. So I was to Pacific, and I wanted to do the MMA class. I wanted to do UFC, you know. But after I got punched in the face like 2-3 times, I realized like, this shit might not be for me. But the rolling aspect of it was really, really fun. Like, you know, I would get destroyed by all these people that were in there. And then, I mean, Matt and then Ted and primarily Jason Hannon have been kind of my coaches through the whole thing. Jason, a lot of my game is after what Jason has taught me. He spent countless and countless hours with me. Even though I was a 23-year-old hungover kid, he would, you know, spend time with me, and we do half guard drills, you know, live guard drills. So it was a lot of fun. So yeah,
Jason, I'm not sure if Jason trains with you guys anymore, but
he does. He does. He wasn't able to make it today because he's working. But I can tell you that Jason and I used to go over to. This is actually even before I opened Pacific Martial Arts. Dan Camarillo had a house in Clovis, and he had these old canvas mats, and I use that word really loosely. They were like, I don't know, like 1-inch rollout mattresses is what they were sort of like. They were so dirty and nasty, you can't even imagine. And we rolled those canvas things out in his garage, and yeah, we trained there. And then I would train with him at Fresno Judo. And yeah, Jason also did judo in the past at Fresno Judo. And so that's how all of us sort of came to know each other Dan, Dave, Jason, and myself was through Fresno Judo. Ted came along. Ted was training with another guy, and I met Ted at Woodward Park, and we got to talking jiu-jitsu. And I said, well, you need to meet the Camarillo brothers. And he's like, well, what belt are they? I said, well, they're blue belts. He goes like, oh, I don't know. He's like, I'm training with a guy who's a black belt. And I'm like, I don't know. You train with these guys and see what you think. So he went and trained with Dan Camarillo, and it was such a different experience that he came over immediately. But I think it's that difference between traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu without any free rolling, and all of a sudden you get with a guy that's used to training hard and free rolling. It's a whole nother experience.
Complete different level. So is that guy that Ted was training with, was he a Japanese jiu-jitsu guy as well?
He wasn't, but he was he wasn't who he said he was. Let's put it that way. Right. He claimed to be a jiu-jitsu black belt under Half. And then one day I was up at Half's and I go, hey, Half, you have a black belt in Fresno? Why didn't you tell me about it? Oh, that was a bad thing to say. Oh, yeah, my goodness.
I'll bet. Hey, man, I was able, because of you guys being the affiliate with Half, that was what gave me made me feel comfortable enough to finally take that trip with Luis Gonzalez. Remember Luis?
Yep.
So I met Luis Speedy Gonzalez. I met him at Matt's at Pacific Martial Arts, and he's like, hey man, we can, because of Matt and Ted and these guys, we can go up to House and we can train because they're affiliated. And in my head, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I don't want to get hurt and this and that. And he's like, nah, dude. He's like, I've already been up there. I've already met this little guy named Batata. Yep. And he's like, we can go up there because of Dave and Dan. And so I started from taking the drives to your school. I started like once or twice a month driving up to Half Gracie's school over there in Mountain View. And that's where I met Batata and a bunch of other crazy characters. But yeah, it was because of you guys that I was able to go up there and train. And man, Half Gracie was a whole complete different individual. But he was a super respectful guy, a real nice guy, serious about his thing, though, man.
Super serious. Yeah.
And one thing I tell a lot of people too, like I never ever thought that I never competed in karate or taekwondo or anything. I just always did like the kata aspect, and I never saw myself competing in jiu-jitsu. But what led me up and gave me the courage to do it was after I had been training with you guys for only a few months, Matt comes out and he says, look I'm having this is something new to me at the time. He goes, I'm having this in-house tournament. And I had never been in a school where people did in-house tournaments. Now, Matt had to be one of the first guys doing this in the Central Valley. For sure, the first guy that I had ever heard of doing it. Besides maybe judo tournaments, there was no such thing as a BJJ in-house tournament. So Matt has this tournament, and I signed up for it, and it was like $20 or something. You know what I mean? It was just to get people experience. And that's where I met another individual that has a great name in the Valley. And he was one of the first guys I ever fought in a tournament, this in-house tournament. And his name was Cole Escovedo. And this kid is wearing a white belt. He's this young kid. And I'm like, oh, in my head, I'm like, I'm a brown belt in Japanese jiu-jitsu. Like, I got this, you know what I mean? And I go out there and I shake hands with Cole, and he must have been like 14 or 15, maybe 16. And this kid just grabs me and just flies into the air, like into a flying guard. And as soon as he hit the guard, he was like, went into an arm bar and just popped my arm like 3-4 times. Like just before I could even tap, like my arm was popping. I didn't even know what was happening to me. Like he did it in the most nicest and friendly way you could do something like that. You know what I mean? But that was where I met Cole. And Cole, how did Cole become a part of, because Cole's a big name in the Valley. Matt, how did Cole become a part of Pacific Martial Arts?
So I actually trained Cole from the time he was about 6 or 7 years old. he's one of my karate black belts. So I trained him in karate first. And once we started doing jiu-jitsu, I knew his physical talents. So I told him, I said, listen, you're going to do this class. You're going to do this jiu-jitsu class. He didn't want to do it. And I was like, no, you're going to do this class. This is right up your alley. This is where your talent lies. You're going to do it. And I forced him to do it for a while. And then he realized that that he had a real talent for it. And so then he actually didn't stop doing karate for quite a while. He kept doing karate and jiu-jitsu. I think he was 7-0 in the cage before he like stopped doing karate. And even toward the end of his career, you still would see him throw some karate kicks now and then. So yeah, I started
That's
with
great.
him. His dad actually had brought him in to karate.
Hey, Tom, if I can interject real quick. Hey, Matt, I remember Tom had mentioned something about if you've been in the Valley long enough, doesn't matter what gym you're from today, you have bound to have gone through PMA in Fresno at one point in your life. Well, I too have, I went through at one point in my life, that's how I met Eduardo. I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I kind of went through that gym and a semi kind of visitor basis. And it was just cool. I mean, it was just like the gym back then. It still is, you guys have quite a few locations. So doing this podcast, working with Tom, I've noticed that, some of the history, Tom says all the time, hey, we're bringing this podcast, we're going to bring out the history, and it's all coming together now that we have you here with the North and South Valley Jiu-Jitsu. I can attest that I've seen that, and I've learned that a lot of it comes from old judo guys, and then transitioning into jiu-jitsu, and then more specifically, everything has a lineage. It seems like the Camarillo brothers have done quite a bit for the Valley to bring jiu-jitsu here, and more specifically, Huff Gracie. Tom Owens is an OG of the South Valley. Matt, North Valley OG, right? But you guys all started at the same time, and it's just kind of cool how this history connects North and South Valley, along with the individuals, Dan and Dave Camarillo. Tom and Matt, what do you guys got to say to that?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, there were no black belts in the entire valley. And Half Gracie was either you went up to Half Gracie or you went down to Torrance and went to the Torrance Academy with Hoyce. Those were pretty much your two options. I mean, there really weren't very many black belts in the whole United States, and a lot of us were friends through judo. Tom Knox was a judo player, and he would come up pretty regular. He would come up with Mike Sir from back in the day. I don't know if you remember Mike.
Gosh, that's a blast from the past right there.
And then, oh man, I'm trying to remember his name. Ron. What was Ron's last name? Ron Holsey. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yes. Ron would come up. And a lot of times we'd all drive up to Half's together, or we'd have Half or Batata or one of those guys down for a seminar. And Dave and Dan were down pretty regularly. Well, Dan lived here until he finally moved up there. But yeah, we had a lot of the guys come through PMA, even outside of jiu-jitsu, a lot of guys have come through. Jasper, Tayaba. I basically, I'm his daughter's godfather. So, he was an instructor for us for a lot of years, and we've just had a lot of impact on a lot of people, and I feel blessed to be in that position.
What do you think, Tom?
Man, what I think is everything you just said is true. That's where I met everybody. That's where I met Tom. I knew Tom Knox I skateboarded when I was a child for most of my life, and Tom Knox was tremendous professional skateboarder. He rode for Santa Cruz Skateboards. A lot of you guys know that. And one day, after I had been training with Matt and them for a while, one Saturday morning, Tom Knox and Mike Sir showed up, and that's where I met them on the mat. And Tom Knox was already a black belt in judo, a very proficient black belt in judo under the Japanese fella here in Visalia. And so that's how I met them. That's where I met Luis Gonzalez. That's where I met Ron Holsey. Matt, you remember Ernie?
I
Ernie?
do. Ernie Tuscarini. It was at Tuscarini.
Yeah, Tescarino. There was another individual a lot of people don't know about. He's a big heavyweight guy. He was a blue belt under Higan Machado at the time. And he would come to my garage, and like I'd come back. Those 6 mats I had from the Japanese jiu-jitsu sensei, I had them in my garage, and I'd have Ron Holsey and Ernie over there like a few days a week. And I'd come back from Pacific just belittled because I was never tapping people out. It was just always me going over there and learning good stuff, but always in the live rules and the guard pass drill, I just would get mauled for it. It was a long time. It was never me tapping people out. I wasn't getting hurt. I was having a blast, but I was always just getting tapped out and getting schooled down. And I'd come back to my garage and I'd tell Ernie, like, man, this time the guy got me with this collar choke and he set it up like this and he did that. And like Ron and Ernie would always like offer me advice, like, well, next time the guy does that, try to do this on him. And everybody was friends though, man. It was the coolest thing. And back then, if you remember, Matt, like me and Dan, we were talking about this last show or 2 shows ago with me and Dan Camarillo. Remember back then, there was only in California, there was only really, if you wanted to compete in jiu-jitsu at a good tournament, it was the Santa Cruz U.S. Open. Yeah. And then there was Joe Moreira's
Copa Pacifica
state championship or national.
What? Yeah. And Copa Pacifica.
Copa Pacifica.
That was,
that was Clever's, right?
That was Clever's tournament. Yeah.
That was Clever's. But before that, it was just U.S. Open and Joe Moreira's national tournament.
Yeah.
You'd have, so both of those tournaments would happen once a year. So it's basically 2 main tournaments. And I remember we were getting ready for that Joe Moreira one. That's when you had that, the in-house tournament I talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So you were like preparing us for this. And I didn't know everybody that great. I hadn't been training with you that long. But all I knew is I wanted to do this Joe Moreira tournament. And after just getting beat all the time at Pacific, I signed up for this Joe Moreira tournament, and I go down there, and I didn't even know that Ted and Jason were going to be there. And see, I didn't know this was the kind of people that you guys were, because you guys didn't know me that well. And I go out there and I start competing, and I win the first match, and then I get to like the second, third match. I'd actually made it, tapped out a couple guys, and man, these guys didn't even know me that well. And in both, guess who I had in my corner, man? I had both these guys in my corner, Ted Stobie and Jason Hannon. And like I said, like that's the kind of people that these guys were. They didn't even really know me, but they saw me down there and they remembered me from the school. And man, they took the time to jump in my corner and they helped me out. And that was the first tournament that I actually ever got first place in. And I just remember Ted and Jason, they were just there for me. And what I've always noticed about you and Ted and Jason and man, I miss that guy. I miss Ted, man. He was really something else. But you guys are really not selfish. What's the word? Selfless. You're really out there to help other people. You know what I mean? I think it's super important. You've always been there, brother, to help other people when they're doing their thing.
My general philosophy on teaching is that so if you're a competitor, you gauge by like how many gold medals you have or how well did you do in a tournament. As a teacher, you have to have a gauge too. So at that point, it doesn't matter how many gold medals you have. It matters how good can you make your students. So as a teacher, my goal is, and I think all the guys like Edwardo and Dennis and Jason, all of them have the same attitude, which is I want to ultimately make you better than I am. Not just as good. I don't even want to hold some aces up my own sleeve for my students. I want to make them better than I am. And if that attitude perpetuates to the next generation, the academy will always get better. If I always try and hold people down, then that attitude perpetuates and the academy continues to get worse. And so for the academy to get better, as a teacher, I don't hold anything back. I try, and I want my students to beat me. I want my students to beat Edwardo. And Edwardo's the same way. He doesn't hold back. Jason's the same way. None of us hold back because, as teachers, we want our students to be the best they can possibly be.
Hey, and I forget whose gym it was. I'm pretty sure you would probably remember, but when you walked through the door, I think it was Half's, there was a sign up, or it might have been Higa Machado's, but when you walked through the store, the sign, it was clear, loud and clear. It said, "Leave your ego at the door." And doing that, to what you just said, everything to do what you just said about wanting your student to beat you, that's easier said than done for many men right there. You know what I mean? That is really easier said than done. Now, Ed, like I said, man, you seem like the coolest guy ever, man. Like everybody I talk to that knows you, everybody says nothing but great things about you. Maybe me and Archie will get up there soon to train with you. But Ed, I know I watched a bunch of your videos today, or everything I could find on YouTube with some of your competition.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, it was cool, man. It was cool. I could see the wrestling that you got, like, you know what I mean?
A little bit.
What I noticed about you, it looks like you really you're pretty relaxed out there when you're competing. You're relaxed. It looks like you're having a pretty good time. But the main thing, it looked like you're really relaxed out there. How do you feel about competition? Are you more into the competition aspect or the training? Or I know you're an instructor too. What is your favorite thing about BJJ?
Oh, I mean, obviously, a little bit of everything to me is important. The competing is really for myself, just to feel uncomfortable. Kind of learn, stay in shape, have goals, things like that. And besides, the game is always changing. So when you're in the tournament, sometimes, yeah, I'll go compete, but then I'll go see something really cool that somebody else is doing. Then I'll take a mental note, kind of go home, learning a little bit about it, share it with the team, game plan, lab it up. That's really what the competing to me is. And just going out there, seeing new things, bringing it back to the gym, meeting cool people. I do sales for a living, so I have to drive all over California, and it's always nice to be like, hey, even though I competed against somebody, I can still hit them up on Facebook and be like, hey, man, can I drop by? I just want to roll. And everyone in the jiu-jitsu community is the same way. Everybody's like, please stop by. Like, if you don't stop by, I'm going to have an issue with it. You come in, they're super respectful. They want you to train hard. Everybody kind of builds each other up. I mean, it's always fun when you walk into a new place because, it's really respectful and cool, but they're going to bring it to you, right? Because you're the guy coming in just for the
fresh meat.
Yeah. So it's cool. You get to use the things that you're working in. They're using the things they're working in. Everybody learns. Everybody goes together. It's just cool to see what the community has done in the last 10 years. It's just crazy. Night and day.
It's freaking phenomenal, man. What the Central Valley Jiu-Jitsu / MMA community has done, it's phenomenal. Another thing, Ed, before I saw you compete Jiu-Jitsu, something that looked like you really enjoyed doing was you're also a really good referee, and I don't say that just about anybody, because being a referee in grappling and jiu-jitsu or judo or wrestling, any of the grappling arts, to do it right, man, like if you're a good referee, that means that you have some knowledge. That means if you're a good referee, you're probably pretty good at jiu-jitsu as well. But it looked like you really, really enjoyed yourself as a referee. How did you get into that? The first time I saw you was at Fight to Win. Looked like when you're like you knew it. Everybody knew you out there. Looked like you were really comfortable.
Yeah, man. Well, I still, as any ref, I still got my blunders. There's a few out there that still haunt me to this day. I'm not perfect, but
it happens.
Shout out to Sean Fowler and Corey Cass when they were at Grappling X. And I was just a blue belt. They were like, hey, we need somebody to come in and ref. I came in. I knew the rules. I didn't know. I don't great at the very beginning, but I learned. I'm not scared of hard work, so I learned the best I could. Plus, I was a broke college student, and $100 went a long way. So yeah, I started doing that. Then I got picked up by luck by Grappler's Quest back in the day. So They would send me and Dennis Edwardo to Vegas at least 2-3 times a year. It was the best. I was like a purple belt, looking at the guys that I looked up to, that I wanted to be like first stage to see them. So it was really, really cool. And then later on, I just started wrestling for everybody. I did Copa Pacifico. I've done, Fight to Win. I've done ADCC trials. So I've reffed everybody at this point. One of the craziest matches I ever saw was Gary Tonin versus what's his name from Checkmat. It was like a crazy match, man. They kept putting each other on the tables, on the scoring tables. They picked each other up and just slam each other there. It was nuts. I had to ref that. I have Buchecha yelling at me in the corner. It was wild. So you get through that kind of stuff, and then you just learn the concepts of jiu-jitsu a little bit better, I think. I might not be the best practitioner, but I can understand concepts really, really good.
Now, you guys talk about
Go ahead.
You guys talk about going from, the history of how you guys did that in the Valley, and how now you guys can go from basically if you're traveling out of town, you can go from school to school and train. Yeah. Were there rivalries back when you guys first started developing, like coming out in Fresno? Were there other schools that opened up that you guys had a rivalry with, or anything to that effect?
Matt?
I think we tried hard to always be friendly with everyone. I would say probably for the longest time, the biggest rivalry we had was with Impact Jiu-Jitsu, and that was because that's where Ted originally trained, and as soon as he rolled with Dan Camarillo, he was like, I'm out of there. And then there was the big build-up. It seemed like it was a year or 2 years building up, which was the fight between Cole Escovedo and Philip Perez. Which Philip Perez was, representing Impact Jiu-Jitsu at the time, and Cole was representing us. So I would say, and that's going way back in the day. A lot of people may not remember that, but
that's old school right there.
That was such a huge fight that Tachi Palace was actually afraid that there was going to be riots.
Wow.
Remember how electric that crowd was?
It was crazy. We actually got escorted out off the premises by sheriffs because they were like, you guys can't stay here any longer. So as soon as Cole won the fight, they're like, yeah, we don't want to take any risk. You guys need to leave right now. And it was crazy. They walked us to a car. I'm not talking about 1 or 2 sheriffs either. I'm talking about like 12 sheriffs around us, like taking us out to our car. And nothing happened, but yeah, it was pretty crazy. That would be, I would say, the biggest rivalry. But after that fight, that rivalry just sort of ended. And at some point, Philip Perez even ended up coming and training with us. And a lot of those guys that were over there, John Rooker, Ryan, TK Nino. Some of those guys, a lot of those guys that were at the top of the pyramid over there ended up coming over, and Impact ended up shutting down. And, that was before even Tosh opened up his school, or Koscheck was even a name, or so that was way back in the day. That's probably our biggest rivalry we ever had. But in general, we try and get along with everyone.
I think I've trained everywhere in the Valley with everyone, and I've competed with guys that I've trained with all the time. And I mean, when the referee says go, we're gonna try to break each other's limbs, but before and after that, we're all friends. We all know each other. We all try to make each other better. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's also like the Valley versus everybody else. When we go out to the bigger tournaments,
Right.
There's guys that that I've competed with. Albert, they used to train at Dance. Victor Cervantes, guys I've competed against that I've cornered in different tournaments. They corner me. They've helped me out. Hey, Ed, minute left, do this. So that's really cool.
That's a beautiful thing, man. That's a beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu. There's another guy that I can't leave out because he's part of the story too, man. The story that I know with you, Matt, is you mentioned his name is Corey Cass.
Yeah.
And Corey's another one that he was training with me in my garage at the box, and then he would drive up and train with you guys. And Corey, I'm really proud of Corey and what he's done with the Grappling X. What do you think about Corey and what he's done with the jiu-jitsu? Even though he moved away, he's made a point to come back to the Valley every year because of all of us. You know what I mean? What do you think about Corey and what he's done?
Well, I love his tournaments. We regularly go to Grappling X. I mean, he makes it the price reasonable. He does the double elimination, which I teach most of the kids classes at Pacific, and the thing with kids is, especially their first tournament, it's frustrating to take a kid to a tournament. He's nervous. He loses a match, and they spent $100 on the entry fee. Corey keeps his entry fees pretty low. He does double elimination, and he comes back and serves this community with high quality tournaments.
Yep, they're high quality. He's doing a great job, man. I love that guy. So Corey, you're out there. A lot of props to you. James, we mentioned his name for real briefly, but a lot of people don't today have no idea who the guy was. But after here in Visalia, the first jiu-jitsu school was my garage. It was called the Box. It was just a garage, small little.
I've heard of it.
But after when I met Mike Sir and Tom Knox, Mike Sir actually opened up the first location in Visalia. It was called Jabushi.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, you met Mike, didn't you, James? What'd you think about Mike?
I didn't really meet him. I just saw him compete. And that was it when he fought in WEC against Rafael Del Real. And that was the first cage fight I ever went to. And it was bananas. Like, it was basically just a brawl. I loved it. And that's why I know who Mike Sir is just based on the fact that I saw him compete in MMA years ago. But I knew he had a martial arts background. And so the name, of course, once you say it, it definitely comes up and rings a bell.
Yeah, MMA back then, the WEC, man, you like we talked about it before, you could get a phone call to fight in there and you might be fighting a guy that just came out of a bar or a back alley, or you
almost
could be
like
fighting
a tough man contest.
Or you could be fighting a guy out of the Lion's Den or Randy Couture's school or any of these. Mike just was a guy like Matt and kind of like Matt and some of these other guys. He had a vision to get the jiu-jitsu going, and he opened up that Jabushi, which got me and Tom Knox and Luis Gonzalez and Ernie and a bunch of guys together. So I thought that was pretty cool. But Matt, are you still teaching karate and all these other arts or what?
I do on a limited basis. I mean, jiu-jitsu is my main thing, but I do teach some karate, and probably the other thing that I teach a lot of is combatives. I'm a certified Modern Army Combatives program instructor, so I do a lot of military combatives, which honestly is heavily jiu-jitsu based. It just adds other elements like multiple people and weapons and that sort of stuff. But I do teach other martial arts, and usually, just like I did with Cole, I'm usually steering people into jiu-jitsu. Sometimes people don't quite have the confidence to just get in there, and so I might start them in something else, and then encourage them to do some jiu-jitsu. I just really believe jiu-jitsu is for the time that you put in, every hour you put into jiu-jitsu, the amount of effectiveness you get out is very high compared to a lot of other stuff. Obviously, people that are very talented guys and have put in a lot of time can make stuff be really effective. Look, Wonderboy is one of my favorite fighters of all time, and he's taken karate technique and made it wildly effective in the cage at a very high level. But for the average person, I feel like jiu-jitsu, every hour you put in, you get a lot back out of it. So.
Now, Ed, you're only 33, man. That's a golden age right there. What do you got lined up, brother? You got some competition coming up or what?
Well, I was telling the guys earlier, I had put on my family schedule. I was going to do 8 comps this year at least. That's with work, family, the whole thing. So I really wanted to make it happen, but then the Corona kind of messed it up. So I had 2 in so far this year, and I was on path. But yeah, I was signed up already. I try to do as many. I work for Grappling X. I am a ref. I try to compete when it's possible, when we have enough refs, when there's enough people. And Mason Fowler was going to do a tournament in town. I had hit him up. Hopefully, I was trying to work something out for that. And some grappling industries. I try to do Master Worlds, but everything's kind of up in the air right now. Just it is what it is, Yeah. So at least I know like Master Worlds by BJJF will be probably happening regardless, but I don't know about anything else with them on school grounds at least. I don't know if they'll move venues and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm just trying to get busy, and especially a lot of tournaments that they're free for black belts. I'm in 100%. Sign me up. If you're free,
there you go.
I'm there. Just if there's a will, there's a way. So I'm there.
Well, guys, it was awesome to have a 45 minutes without talking about the virus, but
it was really great. Thank you. Perfect. It was good. That was a good record. We got to talk
about it a little bit because all of us are in quarantine, and the reason that we're doing this virtual podcast is because of it. But I always feel like everything's meant for a reason, and I think we're going to get through this, and we're going to do our thing. One thing I love, though, is that the jiu-jitsu community, and you guys out there know who I'm talking about. Some of you guys have not quit training. You've kept your little groups and disclose locations or whatever to keep it going. But the jiu-jitsu community, man, we're itching to get back out there and get these big classes going. But I know that's all going to happen in due time. And everybody that's out there doing their thing, I know it's going to, when it starts back up again, don't worry, your schools are going to thrive. And I know some of you guys might be worried a little bit, but people love jiu-jitsu, man. And I know when those doors open back up, the mats are going to be full again. And some way or another, the jiu-jitsu community it'll all keep going. And all I can say is don't get bummed out, man. Being quarantined, it's real easy if you're stuck at home, and you got to get out and do stuff, man. So my advice that I would give people, hey, you got to get outside, you got to do stuff. And if you're stuck at home, man, figure out something to do. Like you got to do something, man. What have you been doing, Matt? What's been keeping your mind busy, you and your family, or you been enjoying the family life?
I have been enjoying the family. I've been doing a lot of Zoom classes. I've actually been working out quite a bit. At first, I didn't work out at all. And, I was just super bummed. And then I thought, well, I can't control it, so I can only control how I react to it. Mm-hmm. And when the gym opens back up, do I want to come back in and just be super weak and prone to injury and no gas, or do I want to come back in and have those guys that sat on their couch the whole time go, holy crap, Matt feels strong? And I just decided that's how I want it to be. I want to come back and have people, feel like I feel strong. So I've really been working out. I've picked up my home workouts quite a bit, and that's what I've been doing.
Hey Matt, as a gym owner, you say when we come back, and we're all saying when we come back, what kind of new normal will there be? A new normal, or what kind of comeback are we going to come back to, you think?
So, I hate to throw out dates because they can always change, but I've heard some promising things from the city. April's gone. Let me just say that for a fact. April's gone. But I've heard some promising things, but we may have to step things in a little in certain, taking precautions, maybe ending classes a little bit sooner so that the mats can get cleaned every single class, instead of, at the beginning. Usually we would clean the mats and we'd have 2 or 3 classes and then clean the mats. And I think that's going to end. It's going to be like you have a class, everyone's off the mat gets cleaned. you may have to have, less people in a class for a while, or you might have to have, what I've been talking to my instructors about is the possibility of having dedicated instructors or dedicated training partners, I mean. So if Tom and I are training partners, we're training partners through the whole thing. We're not trading partners every round. He and I are it until we go to, what the feds have dubbed phase 3. Because phase 3 is basically when we get back to normal. So phase 1 and 2, we're going to have to make some modifications. And it may be training with less people. So I've already been thinking about how I'm going to restructure classes, possibly partner people up with really small groups that are at the very same level, so we can still get really good workouts in.
You feel Matt, because of the sport that we're in, and not only us, maybe any grappling sport, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, judo, even boxing. There's more close contact, more people sweating on each other. Do you think the restrictions are going to be worse on us versus baseball, for example?
Absolutely. Which is why we'll have to, as gym owners, we're going to have to prove that we can make some kind of modification that somehow makes it safer, or seem safer to those handing down restrictions. If we just go back to my classes with 40 people on the mat and we're running rounds and everyone's switching partners, that's not going to fly in the very beginning. So we're going to have to do some things, giving people home workouts. Can't come in at all if you're sick, and I know we've always said that, but there were always those guys that would come in and be like, "Oh, I'm just going to sweat it out." Well, that's going to end.
Those days are gone.
But yeah, we're going to have to make some modifications, or else we're going to have to pay some fines, which I'm not a fan of paying fines.
Wow.
So, but I know that gyms are scheduled for phase 1. Whether we can qualify as a gym, as a grappling art, is sort of going to be how can we sell that to the city. So.
Yeah, I think it's going to here as soon as the weather heats up a little bit. My prediction, as soon as this weather heats up, this coronavirus is going to go away. I think everything will get going. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Matt and Ed, but before we close this bad boy up, thank you guys again for coming on. Do you guys got any sponsors that you want to give a shout out to? Anybody out there you want to give a shout out that's helped you guys out?
Oh man, I mean,
or anybody out there.
Yeah, we've had a lot of students that right at the beginning of this, the first thing they said was just like, "Don't cancel my account. I want to support you because I want a gym to come back to." And so I'm really just thankful for the students. I mean, really I call them students, but really they're our family. And so without them, we'd be in a deep hole right now. I still had to pay rent in April, and it's we got 5 locations. That's eats up a lot of dollars. So if it weren't for all those people stepping up to the plate, we'd be in trouble.
Wow.
5 locations, huh?
5 locations. I know, it's crazy. Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's so, guys. Hey, take it from me, man. Take it from Archie. Take it from James. Take it from a whole lot of people. If you want to get some legit training, and not just BJJ, but karate and other arts too. But really, if you want some legit BJJ training, even if you train at another school, you should stop by and meet Matt, and just go through and meet Ed, and just see the difference. There's always a difference everywhere you go, and there's a lot of history behind it, which is a cool thing. And Matt, I just want to thank you for a lot of the things that I haven't accomplished that much in martial arts or MMA, but the things that I did accomplish in jiu-jitsu competition and in MMA, a lot of it did come out, from you guys. You and Ted and Jason helped me out quite a bit. And Ted, man, like I said, that guy, we didn't talk enough about Ted, but Ted Stobie, man, that dude played a tremendous part in my martial art history. And I know he also played a huge part and a lot of people's
A lot of people.
deal.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about Ted, dude, before we close this up, because man, that guy was something else, dude. He was the nicest dude ever. He was a small little guy. Maybe 145.
Yeah.
Talk about Ted a little bit. Ted was something special, man.
So yeah, I mentioned that I met Ted actually at Woodward Park. He was doing a jiu-jitsu demonstration, and I said, "Hey man, you got to come train with this guy, Dan Camarillo." And so he did, and after that, he was sold, and he was a big part of the gym, and he was pretty amazing. I remember one time, this was way back in the day, we set up a booth at Fresno City College, and you could not get away with this anymore. We put out a couple fold-out mats. In fact, those fold-out mats are sitting right over here in my living room. We put them out on the grass and a table, a sign that said, "We'll take all comers."
Oh shit! Nice.
Oh man.
This is no joke, man. We had guys coming up to the booth, and we made them sign a waiver, and then we're like, "No striking."
Wow.
But you try and make me give up, I'm going to try and make you give up. This is how you give up. You tap out. And we just traded off taking on people.
Wow.
And, we were about to pack up, and the Fresno City wrestling team had just finished practice, and they came out. And so Ted and I traded off grappling these guys, and it got to the last guy. It was this big guy, his name was Mercedes, just like shoulders coming out of his ears. And I was like, I looked at Ted, and I'm like, I don't want any part of that guy. And Ted's like, I got it. And
I got you.
So, Ted grapples this guy. The guy takes him down right away. And Ted starts to put him in a triangle. The guy Mercedes picks him up, slams him down on the mat. And Ted still finished the triangle. It was really amazing. His knees were like super hypermobile, so he was able to do a lot of sort of crazy stuff. But that was definitely a crazy time. I mean, I just can't even imagine doing that today, just putting out a sign, "Take all comers."
That would be interesting, actually.
Time. Yeah, Ted had one of the best triangles ever that I ever came across.
Yeah, sure. His triangle was really good. Yeah.
And now, not just Ted, another important part, like we talked with Dan Camarillo. We were lucky to have him on the show the other day. But that's also where I met Dave, and I met Dave before Dan. And those two brothers right there, I'll tell you what, too, man. They were blue. Dan was a blue belt when I first saw him compete at the Santa Cruz U.S. Open. But this guy had a black belt in judo under that Fresno Japanese gentleman, and Dan and Dave weren't they both like junior Olympic gold medalists in judo?
Yeah.
Now, so Dan, I mean, when you go to those jiu-jitsu tournaments back then, most people were pulling guard. They didn't have that judo skill. And Dan Camarillo, the first time I seen him compete, and his brother Dave, in the same day, as soon as they would grab these guys, as soon as they would touch grip, they'd have these guys flying through the air with either a foot sweep or like a Seoi Nagi hip throw. I mean, nobody else was doing it. They would throw you, and as soon as you hit the mat, you would be in an arm lock. And I was like, a blue belt back then is a high-level black belt today. You know what I mean? Their level of blue belt back then. Don't you think, Matt? Wasn't it a little bit different back then?
It was sort of crazy. Like, you had to get your blue belt, you pretty much had to be where no white belts could touch you. Not even good, a D1 wrestler comes in to house school, they can't even be able to touch you in order for him to think you're a blue belt. It was sort of crazy. I mean, I had my fair share of challenge matches where black belts from other systems would come in the school, and that hasn't happened in a lot of years. But yeah, when I was a blue belt, it sort of was a little bit common because these other martial arts guys, they weren't liking jiu-jitsu so much.
Yeah. So David, Dan Camarillo, I got, man, a ton of respect for those guys, and just a ton of respect for them. I remember Ralph Gracie I remember him saying himself, to get that blue belt, you would have to go to a tournament as a white belt and not only beat each guy, but like say you had 3 matches, you could not only just beat them by points, but you had to finish each guy. So you had to win that tournament, but you had to be able to finish each guy. So there was something to it.
No,
But,
that's a true story. Because when I was trying to get my purple belt, I went to Copa Pacifica and I think it was Copa Pacifica, and I tapped like 4 guys, and the 5th guy just beat on points. And I went back. I was so proud of myself. Showed half my medal, and he didn't say a good job or what. He's just like, "Did you tap everyone?" I go, "I tapped 4 out of 5," and he just turned around and walked away. So disappointed. I was just like, "Oh my God, it's brutal."
Wow.
Those guys are serious. He was a serious individual. I don't know whatever happened to Ralph Gracie. Hopefully he's really doing good out there. But
he's
the
in
Gracie
Brazil.
family, man, people don't talk much about the Gracies anymore. You don't really hear too much about them. But you guys mentioned Edwardo. You mentioned Buchecha earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this morning I was just watching the match when I was drinking some coffee. It was Roger Gracie versus Buchecha. Yeah.
Which one?
That whole Gracie family was out there. Oh, dude, it was tremendous, man.
Is that the one in Brazil or the one that did in LA?
I'm not sure. Roger Gracie ends up on his back and he chokes him with the gi choke.
Yeah. That was the one in Brazil. That was crazy match, man. That was insane.
It was intense. But yeah, those Gracies, man, dude, I got a ton of respect for them. I hope all those guys, a lot of the world today probably doesn't really understand the importance of that family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it is what it is. But anyhow, Matt and Eduardo, hopefully we can come and do an episode of Inside the Dojo at the school over there where we come in. Yeah, we'd like to do that, man. And as soon as this virus still clears up and everybody out there, like I said, with this virus, it's going to clear up. And I hope everybody stays healthy and safe and keep your mind right. Like I said, I got this garden going. It's been keeping my mind right. And I'll get out and go for a run every day or a bike ride. Archie goes out, works out, does his things. Tom Knox and some of these killers, they're still getting their little groups together and training. So if you know the right people, Mason Fowler, some of these other these youngsters, you can get in and get the training still, man. And I hope everybody out there just stays healthy and keeps doing their thing. Thanks again, Matt. It's an honor knowing you, and I hope everything you do in the future is good, dude. Same with you, Eduardo. I hope to see you compete again soon, man.
Yeah, it was great
and
seeing you.
James and Archie, I thank you guys for letting me do this. Before we go, guys, we got to give a shout out to our sponsors real quick. Some of them are over there in Fresno, Matt. We got La Enchilada Mexican restaurant. Not sure if you guys have ate there. It's on Blackstone. Yeah. Guys, let me tell you something. You like tacos asada or a torta al pastor, maybe a burrito chile verde, the salsa, chips and salsa. Hey, legit. And Mexican food is pretty damn healthy for you for the most part if you're training. Beans and rice, carbs. It's not too bad. Great food. Archie, every once in a while, will bring me down a burrito supreme and maybe a torta asada. And I'll tell you what, you eat that, you feel good. Hits the spot. Another thing over there is Rio Acai Bowls. They're in Fresno. You guys like acai?
Yeah, of course.
Hey, if you're a jiu-jitsu guy, man, you know what acai is, but not all acai is created equal. There's a lot of phonies out there. A lot of these juice appeal places and Jamba Juice, they got what they're calling acai. Nah, if you have the real acai, like the real thing, you'll know the difference. Rio Acai Bowls, they got the real thing. You're also going to get great toppings on there, whatever you want. Go get some La Enchilada, then go get you a Rio Acai Bowl. And I don't know if you guys out there, any of you guys are messing with CBD oil. It's real big nowadays. Yeah. There's a ton of CBD oil out there, and I wasn't real big on the CBD. I just thought it was another snake oil or something coming out that, everybody's claiming it does this and it does that. Well, personally, I suffer from seizures, guys, every once in a while. And Archie turned me on to the CBD oil, and I get anxiety and different, little issues here and there. Hey, Gentle Art CBD oil. The guys, I believe he's right there in Fresno, right, Archie?
Yeah, he is. I've actually used that one. I actually like it a lot.
Yeah, those are good
Yeah, I've tried a
products.
bunch of different ones, man. And I can actually say this one I've actually felt something from, and he's a local guy and he's doing a good job. And so, General Art CBD oil, anxiety, depression, maybe a little sleep problem. It's a pretty good thing to have there. And then here in Visalia, guys, we got a business and a company that's been here forever since I was a youngster in junior high. Four Seasons Handy Market. They're one of our sponsors. Hey, man, you want some good barbecue, something good to eat at lunchtime? They got gas. They got all the normal stuff, a beer, wine,
Amazing
whatever you want.
barbecue. Oh my God.
Oh, dude, yeah. The guy is an old school barbecue. He does the real deal. Gets out there with his hands with the grill. I mean, every day this guy's out there busting his butt. Four Seasons Handy Market, guys. Damn good barbecue here in Visalia if you get a chance. And we're always looking for new sponsors, guys. MMA Fight Pass, we're a new company that's growing. And one thing I will say is if you make it onto this show, we're still new. But if we invite you onto this show, like Matt and Dan Camarillo and Tom Knox, and if you've noticed all the guests that I've had in the schools we've been to, nothing but the most top legit guys that I know in the Central Valley. I'm starting here in the Central Valley, and we plan on growing and going as far as we can. But like we've got offers to do it at some of the Gracie schools in different places. But I feel the Central Valley where I'm from, it's super important that I hit up all of you guys. So Matt, it was a real honor. Like Dan and Mark and Tom and all these guys,
Yeah.
we still got more to hit. But man, thank all you guys, and I wish nothing but the best to the Central Valley. Archie, you got anything to say before we close it up, big dog?
Yeah, no, I just want to appreciate Matt and Eduardo, James, you, Tom. I mean, this is a collaboration, right? This is a good time just to kind of use technology and do what we have to do in the new normal. I mean, this is great, though. I mean, we're at least able to get together and hang out and talk in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is cool. This virtual stuff is, hey, the Zoom that you're doing, Matt, like, I want to learn more about all this stuff, but I got a feel in the future there's might be a lot of this. This might be happening a lot, man. Hopefully not, but hopefully it happens in a good way if it does. But yeah, it's going to be like that. So anyhow, James, thank you. We didn't. Sorry, I talked too much, James. I didn't let James talk enough.
It's all good,
It was
man.
awesome
You guys
having
were
you here
catching
with us,
up.
though,
I
brother.
completely understand.
All right.
Awesome, dude. But Archie, thank you. Matt, thank you. Eduardo, we'll
Thank
see you
you.
soon. When this is
Yeah,
over, we'll get it inside the dojo at your school.
we'll get a
So
Sounds
everybody
good.
out there, thank you.
Oh yeah.
Stay safe. Stay with your family. Enjoy this quarantine time. Don't be depressed or anxious. Enjoy it with your family and try to have a good time with it. Make the best out of it. All right,
Cool.
guys. So
Good stuff.
All right,
we'll
guys.
see you next time
All right.
on the next episode.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Eduardo. Awesome.
Take care. Take care,
All
guys.
right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you,
All right.
gentlemen.
Oh. All right.